for whatever reason, when we think of something in the mind, when we think of the mind, like you're saying that coherent thought can contact other entities from other people. Are like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know, that's like the initial immediate reaction.
Right, because we've all been miseducated about the nature of reality.
Of consciousness itself.
Conscious reality,
I've always tried to get people to try to understand how bizarre just imagination is. And when I don't mean imagination by you're imagining things that aren't there, that's not real, you're playing a game with your mind. What I mean by imagination is everything, including the language that we're speaking with right now, the vehicle in which this language is getting delivered through the internet, all of this came from the imagination.
Right.
Everything. This table came from the imagination.
Sure, everything.
The arm that holds this microphone. Someone thought this shit up, and then all of a sudden it manifested itself in a physical form when they actively created it. That seems so normal to us. It seems so normal. But we're the only fucking animal in the world we know that can do this.
Well, and it goes beyond that because, Dr. John at Princeton University had the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, and I knew Dr. John, and they had proven that you could set up a random number generator machine and put your thought towards it and begin to move, whether it's spitting out zeros or ones, and that there is, in fact, been proven scientifically that the mind is actually operating non-locally, meaning that it's not limited to space and time in a linear way. And these studies that have been done by Dean Radin and Dr. John and many other scientists with very good credentials. I mean, Dr. John was an engineer at Princeton. What they found is that, in fact, the mind itself is what Erwin Schrödinger said. And Erwin Schrödinger, of course, was the father of particle wave theory and quantum mechanics. And I think it was in 1910 or so, he said the total number of minds in the universe is one. That is, it's a singularity. And there's a whole area of physics and science that has been drilled down on for years that establish all these things as true. It isn't talked about because the high priests of religion and the high priests of science are all opposed to this information coming out.
So
so part of the secrecy around this whole UFO issue isn't just the physical energy and propulsion systems; it's the paradigm. Because if you ask the question, in fact, going back to this dinner with the CIA director and his wife, very smart lady, and she says, "How are they communicating across the vastness of space?" And of course, I had the I didn't know whether to tell her something that sounded scientific, so I maintained my credibility, or to tell her the truth and risk losing all my credibility. But I decided then, in the early days of this project, that if someone's smart enough to ask the question, I'm going to answer it honestly, even though it's going to blow their mind. And so I looked at her, and her husband, the CIA director, sitting next to me, didn't really understand where she was going. I said, look, take our Milky Way. 100,000 light years across. All right? So that 100,000 light years is a distance. That's how far you would go at 186,000 miles a second for 100,000 years, going at that speed. That's just our own galaxy. Now, you take 1% of that, say 1,000 light years, at the speed of your cell phone or radio wave or TV wave or this system we're using right here. For someone from a star system 1% of the way through our galaxy, for them to say, hello, how are you? And for a spacecraft that's at another star system 1,000 light years away, say here, Earth, to say, fine, how are you doing? That just took how long?
4,000 years.
2,000 years. 1,000 one way and 1,000 another. So the time since the birth of Christ. So the speed of light is too damn slow. And so when you begin to go through what I call the crossing point of light, it's like the sound barrier was a big deal. The biggest deal is the light barrier. And when you go past the light barrier, you're going to cross into these kind of multiphasic resonant dimensions, part of which hook into the singularity of mind and thought. And actually, this film that we're working on, which is the largest crowd-funded documentary in history, to my knowledge, Sirius, and you can find out about it at SiriusDisclosure.com. It's been crowd-funded by the public. It's all been funded by people out there, thousands of people. We're going to do a premiere here in L.A. on April 22nd, if you want to come. But
I would love to.
Okay, come.
But we can't send things at the speed of light, right? I mean, even saying that.
Beyond the speed of light.
But they can't do that, right? I mean, you can't send information in the form of light yet, can you?
No, but fiber optics and things of this sort.
But does that move at the speed of light?
Pretty much.
Yeah?
But
Okay.
but what I'm saying is that if you go beyond the speed of light,
Right.
it's a whole new physics.
Of course.
Okay. So that's what if these craft are here, and now I have over 4,000 cases where they've landed, and we have evidence.
Uh-huh.
I have 3,500 pilot cases. We have over 500 whistleblowers, top secret military corporate people. And I have 110 of them on digital videotape, although nobody really wants to see it, but I have it. So the question is, if they're here, how the hell they get here?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're not using an Exxon Jet A fuel, and they're not using a solid rocket booster, and they're not using an ion drive or anything linear. So you have to begin to have this question. So when the CIA director's wife asked me this, I told her about that they had technologies that interface with thought and consciousness. And that may sound as bizarre to people now, but if you took your cell phone and showed Thomas Jefferson your smartphone, they would think it was magic. If you went to Salem, Massachusetts a couple hundred years ago, you'd be burned at the stake as a witch.
Yeah,
so
no
the
question.
point is that people have to have some humility about the fact that humans are one half of one step out of the jungle technologically. I mean, we're only 100 or so years into anything resembling real technology. So when we're dealing with civilizations that are 10 to the 6th to 10 to the 7th, 100,000 to a million years ahead of us, we have to have some humility about what that might look like. And so when I explained this to the wife of the CIA director, she just looked at me and said, I thought it had to be something like that. I mean, people are ready to actually understand this. Not everyone has to be retarded on this. And I tell folks that what's a shame in my mind is that our civilization has been exploring these sort of what they call borderland sciences for 100 years. And it's all been kept very secret or debunked or ridiculed. And it's actually holding us back, not only socially and spiritually, but environmentally and in every other way. Because this nexus of where you have these advanced transdimensional physics come together, that's how you're propelling through one point in space to another across galaxies. It's also how we're going to be able to run this planet's energy grid without a grid, where every home, business, and car can pull energy out of the fabric of space-time through this kind of physics. And so there's this nexus where electromagnetism and transdimensional physics comes together, and then you cross it a little deeper, and that's where you get into the science of consciousness. And this becomes a very, very complex issue for most people because it's new to them. But once you understand the fundamental science behind it, it's really very simple.
What we need to understand is that no one 200 years ago even thought of a camera.
Right.
200 years ago, when you wanted to picture something, you had to draw it. And there was, the idea of a camera was the idea of a movie, the idea of sending a video on your phone to your friend. You could take a video of you here right now and send it to a friend, and they would get it almost instantly. That's just a tiny blip in human history, a 200-year blip in human history, from riding horses to sending video through the internet.
100 years,
yeah.
even.
And the people that existed back then would have never seen it coming. And if technology, and we know it does, accelerates exponentially, what we're dealing with 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, is completely unrecognizable. We live in an area where our solar system is kind of scary. There's a lot of rocks out there, and they fly around, and occasionally they slam into shit, and they can ruin civilization for a little bit.
Right.
But there might be solar systems out there where that doesn't take place. There could be a civilization that developed 2-3 billion years ago. I mean, we really don't know. We have no idea.
Well, the Earth has had life for 700 million years, and all scientists recognize that, except people who think that the world was made 6,000 years ago. So, but if you really look at our technological development, my grandmother was born in post-Reconstruction South in the late 1800s. Her son worked on the lunar module, put the first man on the moon. But by the time we landed on the moon in 1969, we were 15 years into having classified anti-gravity propulsion devices.
The biggest mindfuck that I always try to drop on people with time is between the invention of the airplane, it was less than 50 years that someone used that airplane to drop a nuclear weapon.
Right. Because we were going from having these technologies to weaponizing them, and our technological development had gotten ahead of our social and spiritual development.
Way ahead.
And what I found is that if you take a step back and look at humanity through the eyes of extraterrestrial civilizations, we've become dangerous to ourselves, but we're also dangerous to others. And moreover, we become an existential threat to the biosphere of the Earth, where we're killing the oceans, the atmosphere, and everything else. All this is unnecessary. So the question is, the misanthropic sociopaths that are running the planet into the ground are going to have to be stood down by the people getting behind disclosure, getting behind the technologies, and basically saying, we're fed up and we're not going to put up with this anymore. It's like the movie Network, and we're mad as hell. And I think people, and it isn't about doing anything violent. It's about saying we need to just move forward because Washington isn't going to do it. My uncle's company, Northrop Grumman, isn't. Lockheed Martin isn't going to do it. It's you and me and the other people out there who get the situation we're in and want to fix it.
One of the things that might have also got their attention was Operation Starfish Prime. Are you aware of that, from 1962, where they launched a nuclear bomb into space? They blew up a nuclear bomb in space.
Well, actually, one of our witnesses, Colonel Diedrichson, was with the Atomic Energy Commission, which became the DOE, and he was an Air Force colonel. And his responsibility was over all the nuclear facilities, but he knew of a program where we were going to lob a thermonuclear weapon and detonate it on the moon. And when that, and they actually worked on this, and when it went exo-atmospheric, when it left our atmosphere, and it was intercepted by an extraterrestrial vehicle and basically dematerialized, was taken out. And he had personal knowledge of this. So
they had actually tried to do this.
They actually launched it, and it was on its way to the moon. There have been a lot of really creative. It's like Dr. Strangelove on steroids with some of these guys. And I still work with a lot of folks who are with the agency and aerospace industry. And there's a term at the Naval Research Labs and CIA for this whole area of science, and it's called WSFM. Daniel Sheehan, who is a constitutional attorney who did Pentagon Papers and Silkwood Case and all this, and I ran this by him. I said, look, I've done briefings for, here's a short list: the Director of Central Intelligence, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, members of the Senate Intelligence Committee, senior people who are on the House, various House committees, Government Oversight Committee, presidential staff, the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, what's called J2. Personally, I took Astronaut Edgar Mitchell to one of those briefings for the Admiral, Admiral Tom Wilson. And every one of these people had been inquiring about this issue and had been denied access. I had given a document that's going to be in this film, Sirius. And the document is on the front of the thing, the briefing I put together for President Obama. It's a National Reconnaissance Office document. And NRO does all the top secret spy satellites. And over their headquarters it says, "We own the night." And that's their motto. We own the night. It's pretty
awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty spooky. Yeah, but so these are the kind of dudes I work with all the time. What happened is that the one of these compartments, it has a whole distribution list: cosmic ops, magic ops, all kinds of. It's about 20 of them. And this is a document that was not declassified, that was given to me. And this admiral recognized one of those compartments, so he contacted them. And on the other end of the phone, he said, "Look, I'm so-and-so." And they said, "Yes, sir, we know who you are." And he says, "Well, I want to be read into," which is military speak for briefed, on this project. And they said, "Sir, we cannot discuss this project with you. You don't have a need to know." He says, "What do you mean? I'm the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. How can I not have a need to know?" And they said, "Sir, we will not discuss this with you." Clip, blocked him.
So who the fuck knows? Who's like, how many people are there? Have you determined that?
Yeah, I have. I know some of the members of there's a committee, and it's transnational. It started out much smaller and less opaque back in the 40s when Truman was around.
Does it have a name?
It did have the name Majestic, and that is not a myth. And so
it was Majestic 12, right? Is that what it was?
Yes, but the document as of the 90s that I got, it still had Magic, M-A-J-I-C, on it.
Uh-huh.
And so a lot of these programs, they've gone through multiple generations of evolution, and now I understand it's a committee of 200 or 300 folks who are corporate, very deep kind of shadow government operations. The mistake the public makes is that they think that just because you're the president or the CIA director or a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, you're going to have access to those. And that's because they do not understand what Rumsfeld said is true on the day before 9/11. And this is going to be in the film, where he said there's $2.3 trillion basically missing that we can't account for.